Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Hey, Yusuke, how's it going? Yuji do be struggling. You do indeed be struggling. Hey, Nick, how's it going? Oh, yes, I'm awake. Shocker. I am here. I am awake. I didn't cancel this time on Eden. Finally. I'm hoping the new schedule goes a little bit better still. Hopefully. Didn't have much luck, but we all good now, I guess. Maybe, possibly. We'll see. But yes, we are back with some good old Eden of Grisaia. To be perfectly honest, it has been a little while, so I got kind of like the brief notes of what happened last time. Not in a mean way, I meant you're streaming Eden this time. I know, right? I know, right? Eden of Grisaia has suffered so much when it comes to streams. It has suffered so badly. Not almost as bad as Pokemon Emerald, but that's besides the point. It has suffered quite a while. But we are finally going to play more of it. Finally. God damn it, the game is so loud I didn't even hear the bleh. I am going to have to double that shit just so I can hear it separately. But it is what it is. That's just the game for you. That's just the game for you. Let me just load this up so the music isn't so bombastic. That's better. That's a lot better, I'd say. Alright, so... yeah, I hope everyone's day's been going pretty well. I spent a bunch of my morning deleting and removing stuff off of my PC that I don't need, and moving files around, and trying to figure out what the hell even is this file. If I don't know what it is, I guess I'm not going to delete it, just in case it breaks something. I still got to go through a hell of a lot. I think I have way too many pictures saved as, like, references for things. So I'm just going to have to, like, go full scorched earth at this point. Just delete them all and start over. Because it do be a lot. Yeah. Is what it is, though, you know? What else we got? Alright, so. Eden of Grisaia. Eden. Good old Eden. Last time we played, from what I remember, we picked up right where we had left off the other time. Of you know, Amane and Michiru's wild, car ride. To continue doing their test given to them by Thanatos. They drove to where they had to go, asked a person specific directions, and, well, Michiru went to the locker she had to go to, didn't follow the instructions inside, got her head whacked, but then went to the next locker she had to go to, and it had brand new cell phones inside, waiting for them. Brand new cell phones that were unconnected and could only really call each other or Thanatos. So now they can't be spied on. All of this, again, was all just tests if Thanatos could actually use them for their plan to save Yuji and, by extension, herself. After that, it was pretty much them meeting all up back together and Thanatos more or less kind of deciding what everyone's best for. But them still trying to figure things out. Coming up with their own ideas of how they would save Yuji, and all of them being terrible ideas. On the other side of things, JB is currently being jailed in the same place Yuji is as well. Just because she's too close to him and maybe kind of sort of let something slip so they're not happy with it, so she's about to be transferred back to America, away from all of this. to a cushy desk job just to keep her out of the way and silent. So, yeah, that's what's happening on that end. It's very broad strokes. It has been a little while since I did play Eden, so I've forgotten the absolute details. But I think now that we're going to be doing this weekly instead of, monthly, I'll be able to remember a little more as we go. So yeah, we're just picking up now with good old Yuji. Amane best girl, Michiru best girl. As much as an idiot she is, Michiru is best girl. Also, again, let me know how the volume sounds of the game compared to me, because I was having some audio fuckiness with some stuff. I think it should be fine. But that's up to you guys. If it sounds good on your guys' end, I think I'm good. Mostly, can you all actually hear me over the game? That's like the big one. That's like always the big one. Can you hear me over the game? And is the game not too quiet? So far, so good. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Alright, let's get into this wonderful, crazy, insane game. Where I get to talk a lot, but I don't have to do voices, which is great. For the most part. I mean, I still like doing voices, but Grisaia is nice in that most of the cast is voice acted. So now I won't be doing anything that'll fuck up my throat, which will make me cough and then make me fuck up my side even more, which is actually getting a lot better. I've coughed and sneezed a few times and it wasn't nearly as bad as it was yesterday, which is good. Which is very good. Alright, I think I've chattered on enough. We can start this before it starts going on way too long, and then, we're never gonna finish this fucking game. Because, I'm sorry, I still want to get to, that Magical Girl spin-off thing starring Michiru that I now have both episodes of. Fucking Chiru, Michiru. Alright. Let's prepare for a lot of reading from me once again. 15 minutes had passed since breakfast. The food here wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. It was mostly just tasteless. Now that Yuji had been reunited with the national defense system that called itself his sister, he was aware that the surveillance cameras and microphones in the ceiling of his cell were essentially Kazuki's ears, eyes, and mouth. Physical distance was irrelevant to her now. No matter where her body might be, she was present anywhere her eyes could see. Temporal and spatial limitations no longer applied. She could be in multiple places simultaneously if the situation called for it. At any given moment, Kazuki might be watching a street corner, exploring a public facility, or using a webcam to peek inside a private home. You basically couldn't turn around without bumping into her. Of course, the idea of an invisible army of Kazukis lurking all over the place was somewhat unsettling. But she'd always been something of a god to Yuji, so the idea of her always watching over him seemed like a natural development. Don't have a god complex about your sister, dude. Christ, the dude's pretty much got a siscon thing going on. She's got a brocon thing going on. They're both fucked up. Let's be real. When you're locked up in a cell all day against your will, you tend to have a good deal of time on your hands. And siblings who haven't seen each other in years always have plenty of catching up to do. In particular, Kazuki was very interested in hearing about how her brother had gotten gotten by following her abrupt disappearance. Very poorly. That's how we got along. Very poorly. My life after you disappeared was, well, pretty much how I described it in those documents. Now that I think about it, I guess this explains why they ordered me to write such a detailed report. You were behind that, weren't you? You never changed, Kazuki. Back when we were kids, you used to interrogate me about my day the minute I got home from school. Jealous much? What are you even talking about? Oh my god. Kazuki? Don't be going all jealous stalker on us. Thanks anyway, but I really don't think so. Look, forget about me. Why'd you end up like this, Kazuki? Well, you died. You were in an accident on the way back from your training camp and got stranded in the mountains. Only Amane survived in the end. Amane told me what happened from her perspective, but I don't know much apart from that. Yeah, last we saw of you from Amane's perspective, you were there to distract the raving cannibals that were your class from killing you, and you had a broken arm. Oh, shit, actual backstory. It was the night of our escape attempt. After convincing Amane to run off by herself, I was easily pinned to the ground by Kaneda-senpai, who had pursued us through the woods. Straddling my body, she pressed me into the dirt. Kaneda focused her attention on my right hand, which had held the knife I'd taken from Amane. She pushed down on my right arm with an unbelievable amount of force, while Koide-senpai immobilized my fractured left arm. It's gonna be creepy. She had the eyes of a starving dog. The smile on her face was a twisted, hollow thing. The corners of her mouth were wet with frothy spittle. From all appearances, Kaneda-senpai was now governed entirely by her impulses. She hadn't decided to catch me. I was running, so she'd instinctively given chase. Koide Ritsu, for her part, was clearly terrified. When you grow too accustomed to being ordered around, you lose the ability to make independent action. Unless you stay in line and cooperate with the group, there's always a risk that they'll turn on you next. That fear was probably what had made Koide-senpai act, more than anything else. I'm just assuming that's how her name is said. It could be said completely different. Because I'm not Japanese. One of my captors was incapable of coherent thought. The other was a coward who couldn't bring herself to ignore a crossing signal. They'd caught me, but that didn't mean they were going to do anything to me. Not just yet, anyway. A few seconds had passed, and while they had me at their mercy, they obviously weren't sure what to do with me. One of them was governed by instinct, the other by fear. Under these circumstances, fear would be easier to manipulate. I turned my head toward Koide, who was holding my left arm. It is Koide. It is Koide. Nice, I got it right. Keeping my voice utterly calm, I addressed her in a low, menacing tone. Once you've learned to fear something, or someone, that fear tends to stick with you. I could feel Koide-senpai's grip weakening slightly. The words right and wrong held no meaning here. No one knew who to obey. No one knew what to do. In this valley, the law of the jungle was in full effect. Brute strength was all that counted now. But even so, Koide Ritsu was afraid of me. My arm was fractured. I was lying face down in the dirt, utterly helpless. But even so, the idea of antagonizing me terrified her. An intelligent woman can be far more frightening than a physically powerful one. Koide-senpai had spent too much time being pushed around by other people. Her terror of me wasn't rational. I imagine it came to her reflexively. Lightly speaking, Koide-senpai's name was enough to fuel her fear. A part of her mind was screaming to apologize now, while she still had the chance. The next words out of my mouth would be decisive. Koide-senpai had spent most of her young life standing submissively at the side of stronger people. Over the years, she'd internalized certain rules. The way I was treating her set off alarm bells inside her head. Her instincts were telling her not to defy me. Before she even knew it, Koide-senpai had jerked her hands away from my left arm. I didn't let the chance pass me by. With all my strength, I swung my partially fractured arm up, punching Kanade square on the nose. Blah, blah, blah. What's to say Kanade-senpai? Kanada. Yeah, Kanada. As Kanada reached up to stop the blood now flowing from her nose, I tried to push her off me. But it wasn't as if I had much strength left, and more importantly, I just hit her as hard as I could with my injured arm. It hurt so badly that I wanted to cry. Ouch. Enraged by the pain I'd inflicted on her, Kaneda-senpai bellowed my name furiously. Now that I'd angered her, she'd probably kill me without a second thought. If I wept and apologized, would she forgive me? I doubt it. She's kind of crazily base instinct primal thinking right now. It didn't seem particularly likely. I tried to lay a bit of groundwork for when worse came to worse, but honestly, it appeared that my luck had simply run out. Just as I was beginning to resign myself to my fate, another of my pursuers arrived on the scene. Sakuma-senpai had emerged silently from the darkness behind Kaneda. None of us had noticed her approach. Does Kazuki just sow discourse among the entire surviving people now, so that's how she got away? Or was she literally, like, left for dead? And that's when they started harvesting her brain.
なら、風見を捕まえてどうするつもりだい?
Taking a shaky step forward on her undernourished legs, Sakuma placed a hand on Kaneda's shoulder and pulled. Kaneda slowly turned her head to look up at her.
死ぬのを待つんだよ.
Her right eye was all but useless, her left glistening like a pool of oil. Her face had contorted itself into the slack, deranged smile of a woman who'd given up entirely on life. God damn! Had she not fallen low enough to kill living people in order to eat them? Or had she simply realized that most of my body would go to waste if she killed me now? Whatever the case, she clearly hadn't come to her senses.
とにかく落ち着きなよ、金田。ねえ、風見。情けない話だけれど、私たちは君がいないと全員死んでしまうんだ。
I mean, you guys are dead no matter what.
そのことを君は十分に分かっているし、そうなるように仕向けてきたんだと思うけど、こんな状況で空腹だの治療不足だのと言ってもどうにもならない。この状況で何より怖いのは無気力だ。死んだ方がマシだと思えるような状況の中にあって、それでも風見がいればまだなんとかなるかもしれないという小さな希望が持てる。
So, just having Kazuki around is gonna fill them with hope. Well, that hope went nowhere, because they did all end up dead.
たとえどんなに小さくても希望さえあれば、私たちはまだもう少しだけ生きていられるような気がするんだ。
You guys are already eating people. That's not going well. You guys aren't gonna last. Even this little bit is like, what? You guys buying yourself a few more days? Maybe a week or two? After already spending over probably 2 weeks in this gorge?
君が残ってくれると約束してくれるのなら、私たちも天音を追いかけることはしないって約束するよ。あなたに約束していただくことにどんな意味が？坂下には私が言って聞かせるよ。信じてほしい。
We were well past the point of talking things over like human beings. Did this girl really not understand the nature of our situation? Before I could respond to Sakuma's offer, Captain Sakashita came running up to us, now dressed in her school uniform. Yeah, it turns out when we found her in the coach and they're with the dead body they would probably more than likely been eating, yeah, they were doing the do. So, yeah, she must have gone, she clambered back into her clothes to come running. God. That's fucked up.
風見さんを捕まえたのね。スオさんはどうしたの？逃げられたよ。何をしているの？早く追いかけて殺して。生かしておけば私たちは終わりなのよ。
Should Amane successfully make her way off this mountain, the events that had taken place here would be exposed. In other words, Sakashita's spotless life would be stained with an indelible disgrace. That was something she couldn't allow to happen. What, boinking your teacher and eating your fellow classmates? Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see why that would ruin her perfect reputation.
坂下。
Hasn't this gone on long enough? With those words on the tip of her tongue, Sakuma turned to look at Captain Sakashita, and found that her gaunt face was filled with something like vigor.
坂下君また
Sakashita's body jerked at the question. Her eyes found Sakuma's face, pallid and swollen, in stark contrast to her own.
違うわこれはだって私が倒れたら
If Captain Sakashita were to be rendered immobile, there'd be no one to procure and distribute the food. It was a fact that she had essentially kept the group alive for the last few days. Everyone here understood that. And so, no one said anything more. But that very silence filled Captain Sakashita's chest with agony and sent blood rushing to her head. Her own desperate search for an excuse brought her nothing but unendurable shame. I'm not in the wrong. There was no other way. What gives her the right to judge me for doing what had to be done? Why is she making it sound like I'm some kind of selfish monster? As these thoughts ran through Sakashita's mind, the ball of stress that had built up deep inside her since the day of the accident abruptly exploded.
あなたには言われたくない
Sakuma had never done anything on her own. She'd always just gone with the flow. She'd eaten the food they found under clearly suspicious circumstances. And now she was criticizing Sakashita for her actions? It was the last straw.
佐久間
Sakuma Minori had always been this way. She was irresponsible and lazy, but always managed to say the right thing. She never did anything useful, but the younger girls all loved her anyway. Why did everyone always fall for this useless girl's nonsense? The resentful thoughts bubbling up inside Sakashita were intensified by her volatile emotional state. In a blind, unthinking rage, she snatched the knife from my hand and stabbed it violently into Sakuma's oh god. Okay, yeah, so they do end up just killing each other. Great. At first, Sakuma didn't even understand what had happened. Something cold had pushed its way deep inside her stomach. By the time she realized it was a knife, the grass at her feet was already glistening with her dark red blood. Yeah, this is a thing. Enjoy. I guess. Losing control of herself entirely, Koide-senpai began to shriek at the top of her lungs. Still clutching at my broken arm, all I could do was look on in silence, beads of cold sweat trickling down my back. At last, we'd crossed the final line. The violent urges we'd managed to suppress thus far could no longer be controlled. What else could you do but laugh?
坂下もういいんだよ
Sakuma took a half step backward. The knife in Captain Sakashita's hand slipped cleanly from her stomach, its blade drenched with blood.
もういいんだ
Blood poured steadily from the gash in Sakuma-senpai's abdomen, and like air escaping from a punctured balloon, the strength drained from her body. That's it. I'm not gonna survive this one. The moment that realization hit her, Sakuma swayed heavily backward. Having offered Sakashita her forgiveness, a beatific expression of relief spread across her face. And she collapsed to the ground.
小出さん、止血を。
No. Even if we didn't already know they were all dead, they're in the middle of the woods with, like, no supplies. They're all just a bunch of young teens. They're not gonna stop someone who's just been stabbed in the gut. You're not saving her. You're not saving her. I'm sorry. It's just not happening.
ボケっとしないで、急いで。
Plus, they're malnourished, too, at the same time, so their body is already really weak. So it's not really going to be coming back from something like this. Jumping at the sound of my voice, Koide-senpai hurried to Sakuma's side. But the wound was so large that she hesitated, not knowing what to do.
私の上からどいて、この状況がわからないの？
With an angry shout at Kanada-senpai, I managed to shove her off me and then rushed over to where Sakuma had fallen.
佐久間先輩、お気を確かに。
Removing my broken arm from its sling, I slipped the cloth off my shoulder and brought it to Sakuma-senpai's injured abdomen. But no matter how much pressure I applied, the blood wouldn't stop flowing. Yeah, no, she's done. She's bleeding out. She's gonna bleed out completely. There's no stopping it.
私が悪いんじゃない。だって佐久間が。
Captain Sakashita was mumbling incoherently toward the bloody knife in her hand, but no one was paying her any heed. Sad irony, I've been looking forward to the stream, but I gotta be in and... The goddamn irony. That's all good, though, Nick. It's all good. The VOD will at least be here on Twitch. I'll have it posted to YouTube after as well for easier viewing. So anything you miss, you'll be able to pick up there, no problems. No worries if you gotta pop in and out. No worries. In the midst of this chaos, I heard someone approaching through the forest. I'll just rewatch the VOD and clip later in case. No worries. And I appreciate it every time you make clips, though. I really do appreciate it. I'm pretty sure like 90% of my clips are now made by you. Specifically with Grisaia. I have so many Grisaia clips. Oh yeah, I felt like no pain in my side from that cough. Finally, pain's like almost gone. In the midst of this chaos, I heard someone approaching through the forest. Huh? Stumbling her way noisily through the underbrush, Ibuki Haruna appeared before us. She looked around the area with glassy eyes, spotted Sakuma-senpai lying on the grass, and slowly squatted down next to her. She's lost it. Ibuki's tone of voice was cheerful, even carefree. The rest of us were stunned into silence. I don't think I'd ever been at such an utter loss for words before.
っていうか、もう死んじゃってます？
Her abdomen was bleeding profusely even as we spoke. Anyone could see at a glance that there was simply nothing to be done.
ねえ先輩、フマ先輩、これってどういうこと？意味わかんなくないですか？だってずっと一緒にいてくれるって約束してくれたじゃないですか。なのになんで勝手に死んじゃうんです？全然意味わかんないし、先に死んじゃうとか、それってずるくないですか？ねえ、クマ先輩。ねえ先輩、先輩いなくなっちゃったら、私明日から誰に髪を切ってもらえばいいんですか？
Naturally, Sakuma-senpai didn't respond. She no longer could.
だから言ったじゃないですか。善人なんて最後はみんないいように利用されて死んじゃうんですよ。だから善人なんか嫌いなんですよ、私は。
Turning her attention from Sakuma's wound, Ibuki now looked around the clearing, and finally spotted Captain Sakashida standing frozen with the bloody knife in her hand. Oh, okay, it's turned on a dime. Ibuki's dreamy expression vanished in an instant as her face contorted with rage. Screaming like a madwoman, she pulled a pair of scissors from her skirt pocket, charged at Captain Sakashida, and stabbed them into her. Okay, yeah, they do end up all just killing each other. With a raspy little gurgle, Sakashida fell to the ground, blood trickling from her mouth. Where the fuck did she stab her? Oh. Okay, yeah, though she's okay. Oh, she's using her as a pincushion. I've never had the game load before. What? Let me just do that just in case. Oh, it isn't a load. That was odd. Overcome by anger and grief, Ibuki pushed Sakashida into the dirt, straddled her, and stabbed the scissors into her body again and again. Whenever Ibuki's bangs grew long enough to be bothersome, Sakuma had cut them for her. The scissors she'd used for that purpose were now covered in blood. Oh yeah, she's lost it. Even as she screamed, even as she wept, Ibuki didn't stop plunging the bloody scissors into Sakashida's body. Every blow was an expression of her hatred for the cruel and vicious world in which we lived. fuck you, Ochi! It was at this moment that Mr. Ochi finally arrived at the clearing. At the sight of this horrific spectacle, he stopped dead in his tracks. In a place that was already as hellish as this, what was the point of murdering each other? It didn't make any sense. Mr. Ochi moved on pure reflex, thinking only that he had to stop the brutal assault that was taking place. Looking quickly around the area, he grabbed a volleyball-sized rock from the ground with both hands, lifted it up, and brought it down violently on Ibuki's head. Oh my god. Alright. Okay, he bashed her fucking head in. Great. With a heavy thunk, the rock caved in Ibuki's skull. The impact knocked her head down between her shoulders. She slid off Sakashita and fell on her side, still clutching the scissors in her hand. It's a domino effect, and why are you laughing? The disaster had unfolded in what felt like an instant, before we could even try to prevent it. Koide-senpai fell on her backside and lost control of her bladder. Oh my god, really? Her fragile mind finally broken. Alright, so she got mind broken by the violence and trauma. Great. Wonderful. All color drained from the world, leaving only ugly shades of gray. Everything was wrapped. Warped. Everything was warped. Everything was twisted. No one could keep the madness from spreading. Ibuki's lifeless eyes were fixed resentfully on Mr. Ochi. Even now that she was unconscious, they glittered in the moonlight, as if burning with unspeakable hatred. Faced with the consequences of his impulsive emotional actions, Mr. Ochi stood stock still, his face full of shock and horror. Yeah, you just fucking caved in one of your students' heads. Good God. Jesus. Yeah, they lost it. They have absolutely lost it. What is this, Hunger Games? There was a prize at the end of Hunger Games. There's nothing at the end of this. Kaneda-senpai's cruel, deranged laughter forced its way through our ears and echoed inside our minds. We were past the point of no return. As that fact finally sank in, Mr. Ochi's legs gave out beneath him. I don't know how many fights you've seen women have, but I don't think a lot of them end up with someone grabbing a fucking rock and using it as a bludgeon. That was your instinct, to grab a fucking rock. Instead of, oh, I don't know, do the thing where you grab someone like that and pull them away. But no, instead you go Oonga Boonga on their asses. With every word he spoke, Ochi's body tilted further to the side. Perhaps he was trying to stay upright as the world lurched around him. I can't take this anymore. What does any of it even matter? What's the point of living through all this suffering? Ochi's job was to serve as an example for his students, to offer them hope as they struggled through the anxieties
Okay,
of youth.
first, what? Second, the
Over the years, he'd begun to hold something like pride in his occupation. Yeah, and I just threw it all away. But now that he's crossed this final line, that thin strand of strength gave way, and he was left with nothing. And yet, it didn't matter if everyone had given up. It didn't matter how desperate our situation had become. I was going to do everything I could, no matter what. I'd spent years teaching my brother to do the same, after all. I might die in this place, but I wasn't going to die a hypocrite. Hurrying to Captain Sakashita's side, I desperately applied pressure to her wounds. Okay, she got stabbed multiple fucking times. You're not applying pressure to all of that.
大丈夫。傷はそんなに深くない。数は多いけど、まだ助かるわ。小出さん、手伝って。
You mean Koide-san, the mind-broken piss baby in the corner? Yeah, she ain't gonna do anything to help. With only the use of my right hand, I couldn't possibly stop the bleeding from all of Sakashita's countless wounds. I called for help, but Koide-senpai's fear had given way to despair. She didn't even move.
ありがとう。もういいわ。
Sakashita's voice was raspy and faint. As if to refuse my attempts at treatment, she reached up and grasped my arm. And she grabbed the broken arm. I would laugh my ass off. She grabbed the broken arm.
あなたの言う通りよ。風見さん。ここまで落ちてしまえば、私はもう戻れない。諦めてはダメよ。生きてさえいれば必ずなんとかなるから。
Nope, not this time. Sakashita responded to this rather inept attempt at encouragement by shaking her head slowly.
あとはあなたに全部お任せするわ。いつをお願い。坂下さん。
Why had it come to this? None of it was anyone's fault. So how did everything gone so wrong? That unanswerable question echoed heavily in all of our hearts. Sakuma Minori died from shock and massive blood loss as a result of a laceration to her abdomen. Haruna Ibuki suffered an open depressed skull fracture as a result of a blow to the head. 2 hours later, she died from cerebral contusion. Sakashita Chiaki had numerous puncture wounds all over her body. Fortunately, the weapon she'd been stabbed with was a pair of craft scissors, so the lacerations were fairly shallow. We stitched up her wounds, but her loss of blood left her in critical condition. Kanada Saya received a broken nose as a result of a blow to her face. By pushing my little finger into her nose, I repositioned the broken bone from within, then filled her nostrils with cotton to prevent further bleeding. As for Kazumi Kazuki, in the course of punching Kaneda Saya in the face, I'd managed to completely break my partially fractured left arm. After setting the bone myself, I fixed it in position using a wooden splint. By now, the only uninjured members of our group were Koide Ritsu and our teacher, Ochi Yoshihiko. But Koide is now just mind-broken and insane, and Ochi has given up. Neither of them were in particularly good shape either, of course. But somewhat surprisingly, Koide proved to be the more mentally stable of the two. I suppose her ability to adapt to her environment made her somewhat resilient in the face of adversity. About an hour after the incident, she stopped staring blankly into space and asked me if there's anything she could do to help. Took you a while. By the time we'd completed emergency first aid and carried the wounded back to their tents, the sun was already rising. On the verge of unconsciousness, Captain Sakashita told me the location of the food she'd hidden away and left its management in my hands.
どうやらここに埋めてあるみたいね。千秋さん、こんなところに隠してたんだ。
やっぱりね、絶対に隠してると思ってたんだ。あの女、独り占めするつもりだったんだ。
それは違うと思うわよ。
なんでさ、この場所、先生だって知らなかったんだよ。
もし独り占めするつもりだったのなら、もうとっくに食べちゃってるわよ。だったら、どうして
Emergency?
これはきっと、いよいよ最後という時に配給するつもりだったのね。誰だって最後ぐらい、白いお米を食べてから死にたいでしょ。
Oh.
それで死んじゃったら意味ないじゃん。食べずに我慢できる時期なんかとっくの昔に終わってたんだし、さっさと出すべきだったんだよ。
And then you all would have died sooner.
あなただったら出した？
私なら埋めたりしないで、とっとと一人で食べちゃうね。
And then you let everyone else die and you would just prolong your suffering.
でしょうね。
つかさ、いつの間にかタメ口だよね、風見。
先輩というだけで尊敬しろと言われても。
She did bash your nose in.
なに？ほんと生意気なやつだな。
ありました。クーラーボックス出てきました。
よしどけ、あとは私がやる。
ダメよ。食料は私が管理します。
うっせんだよ。そうやって今度はあんたが独り占めするつもりだろ。
Yeah, she's not thinking rationally.
やめて。私そうやって争うなら、この食べ物は全部捨てます。
Oh. Let's go, Koide.
バカやめろ。
Huh?
金田先輩。
The fuck was that?
金田さん？
What the hell? After briefly crouching down and grabbing her head, Kaneda-senpai suddenly arched her neck backward and began rubbing the back of her skull against the ground. This bizarre outburst certainly didn't seem to be some kind of ploy to distract us from the food.
風見さん、どうしよう。金田さん、聞こえる？どこがどんな風に痛いの？痛い頭が痛い。内側から破裂する。助けてよ。頭？
It looked as if she was instinctively trying to lower the position of her head.
小出さん、金田さんの体を上から押さえて暴れさせないように。
Either she was trying to find a position that would lessen her agony somewhat, or her movements were involuntary, and the result of something badly wrong with her head.
動かないで。
As Koide held Kaneda's convulsing body still, I reached into her nostrils and pulled out the cotton I'd stuffed in them. As soon as I'd unblocked her nose, a large amount of blood began to flow from it.
小出さん、靴下を脱いで。吸水性の高い白い布がいるの。急いで。
I took the sock and pressed it to Kaneda-senpai's nose. her nosebleed showing no signs of stopping. The stain that appeared on the sock was red at the center, but its outer edges were a light yellow.
一見鼻血だけど、血以外の体液も大量に混ざってる。
There were all sorts of illnesses that could cause those symptoms, but given she'd just been in a bus accident and a brawl... What the hell happened?
どうしよう。しかない先輩と同じ症状だよ。とにかくテントに運びましょう。ここでは何もできないわ。わかった。
On the day of the accident itself, Shikanai-senpai had suffered a fracture on the base of her skull. While she was conscious immediately afterwards, she'd rolled herself into a ball, moaning while clutching at her head, just like Kaneda was doing now. She had died 10 minutes later. Kazuki, did you hit her hard enough to crack her skull? Shikanai-senpai, who'd bled from both her ears and her nose, had probably died as a result of damage to her skull. At this rate, Kaneda would suffer the same fate.
すみません、金田先輩。おそらくはバス転落時の頭部損傷の時点で何らかのトラブルを抱えていたんだとは思いますが、私が顔面を殴ってとどめを刺してしまったようです。
I need to just check something really fast in regards to my headset. Just gonna potentially fix something. Maybe. Damn Windows, changing everything. Not what I wanted. Not the thing I wanted to do. Sorry, guys. Oh my god. Let me find the one thing I need here. So this... Hey, yeah, that's exactly what I want. What does it say to do? Hmm. Well, it's working properly. Hmm. Yeah, it's fine. I'll worry about it later. I feel like I'm hearing some pops and stuff.
そっか、それも仕方ないよね。まあそういうこともあるさ。で、私いつ死ぬのかな。
わかりません。10分後に死んでしまう可能性もありますし、感染症さえ起こさなければ自然に治る可能性もあります。
どうせ死ぬなら早く死んで、さっさと楽になりたいな。
まだ諦めないでください。
ねえ、風見。私、死ぬ前に白いご飯が食べたいな。
そうおっしゃるだろうと思って、今小出さんにお米を炊いてもらっています。とは言っても、埋められていたクーラーボックスから出てきたお米は2合程度です。お腹いっぱいってわけにはいきませんが。
最後の食事としては上等かな。
まずは薄いおかゆから体をなじませていきましょう。
せっかくだし、普通に炊いたご飯がいい。
もう何日もまともな食事をしていません。固形物を急にたくさん食べると消化不良を起こしますよ。
そういうもの？
Yeah, 100% actually. If you've been starved for a very long time and are very malnourished, eating a crap ton of food, solid food, all at once will in fact do you more harm than good. So you have to actually take it slowly. Work your way up to being able to eat foods again. That is, in fact, a thing. I don't think I can change the settings on this right now. Just 1 second. Wow, there's a lot of modes I can set this thing to depending on the game. But it's all newer games. I can do this all from my goddamn phone now. Which is actually kind of crazy, to be honest. So I might end up doing this for myself later when I play specific games. I'll set it so it's for those ones in particular, just to see how it works out. There's over 300 of them here. Holy crap. It's all equalizer options. Yeah, there's a Switch 2 update I'm gonna have to do for this thing, but I don't have a Switch 2, but regardless. Alright. Back to the game. I can switch between Bluetooth and the normal wireless connection. Which is funny as shit. I love that. And it actually tells me when I'm in Bluetooth or 2.4 gig wireless. Actually a handy little thing.
消化能力が落ちているので、食べても胃が受け付けずに吐き戻してしまいます。戦時中には物資輸送を断たれて食料に貧困した島から撤退した兵隊が軍医が止めるのも聞かずに隠れて食事を大食いして何人も死んだそうですよ。
そんな死に方は苦しいだろうな。
Damn right it
ですか
is.
ら 少しずつ慣らしていきましょう。もうすぐお粥が炊き上がるはずです。
そういえば小出遅いね。あいつ一人で全部食っちゃってるんじゃないよね。
小出さんにも同じように消化不良の話はしましたし、それはないと思いますけど。そうですね。他の人たちも気になりますし、少し様子を見に行ってきます。
I feel like this might not go well. Even in a situation like this, I wanted to believe that we still had some shred of rationality left. Koide was an unusually cowardly young woman. I'd assume that telling her, "You'll die if you eat," would keep her from doing anything reckless. It was a naive assumption on my part. Okay. In front of the primitive cooking furnace we'd built by piling up stones, I found Koide-san lying on the ground with her arms around her stomach. At her side, there was a single metal mess kit, full of steaming white rice that looked freshly cooked. Most likely, the process of cleaning and cooking the precious food we discovered in that cooler had been too much for her to bear. As soon as the fluffy white rice was ready, she'd shoveled handfuls of it into her mouth, only to have her weakened digestive system reject it.
だからあれほど警告したのに。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
There was blood in the vomit leaving her mouth. Oh yeah, she's done for.
テントまで運んであげたいけれど、腕を骨折していてそれもできないの。
She's gonna be done for.
ごめんなさい。自分の足で立ち上がってテントまで行きなさい。ごめんなさい。許して。
From the look of things, her stomach wouldn't be capable of accepting anything at all for some time. If we could hook her up to an IV drip, things might be different. But given her already weakened state, it looked like a potentially fatal problem. Picking up the mess kit with the rice Koide-san had prepared, I headed for the tent where Captain Sakashita was lying. Our prompt first aid efforts had apparently been effective. Her blood pressure had recovered, and she'd now regained consciousness. I placed the mess kit next to Sakashita's pillow and gave her a brief update on everyone's condition. She listened quietly, offering only brief responses.
そう。ということは、もう立って歩けるのはあなたと先生だけになってしまったわね。私もいつまで持つかはわかりません。
Yeah, there's only one person now who's technically able-bodied, and that's Ochi. But he's kind of fucking useless at this point, too. I was still lucid for now, but breaking my left arm completely had led to intermittent fevers. If my body lost the ability to generate those fevers, I might very well lose consciousness and never wake up again.
もう現状で頼りになるのは越智先生だけですが、その先生は一人にしてくれと言ったきり、一度も姿を見かけていません。
I wouldn't count him. He's done.
きっと彼はお墓にいるわ。あの人は一人にしてはダメよ。彼はとても弱い人なの。私に彼を止めろと。心配ないわ。お墓にいると言っても、
Oh, okay.
あなたが危惧しているような現場に遭遇するようなことはないから。わかりました。様子を見に行ってきます。お願いするわ。この飯盒は置いていきます。お粥ですから食べられるようなら食べてください。私はいいわ。あなたが食べなさい。別に
私の分をあなたにあげると言っているわけじゃありません。私の分はちゃんと別に用意してあります。
No.
おそらくは最後の食事になるでしょう。遠慮はいりません。
どうせ私はもうすぐ死ぬわ。すぐに死ぬ人間に与える食事は制限なさいと言っているのよ。
Well, when everybody is dying at this point, you're not wasting it. You're all dying, so just enjoy it while you can. Get your last bit of good food before you bite the bullet.
動ける人間の食事を増やしたところで、結局は限られた食料をただ消費するだけの現状です。すべてを食べ尽くしてしまえば、全員死にます。であれば、たとえすぐに死ぬと分かっている傷病者であっても、食事は平等であるべきだと私は思います。
そう。こんな状況でも意見は変わらないのね。あなた分かったわ。でも今はとても眠いの。
If you wake up.
後で目を覚ました時に
If.
いただくわ。
お大事に。
How exactly was she supposed to take care of herself under these circumstances? If you'd asked me, I wouldn't have been able to reply. Still, the fact that she could hold a coherent conversation was a positive sign. She probably wouldn't die for another 2 days or so. By this point, I was keeping a running count of how long everyone had to live, as if I were some angel of death. How many days had passed since the accident, anyway? I couldn't remember off the top of my head. The question was beginning to feel pointless. Pushing my way through the thick undergrowth, I followed the barely visible trail that had led to the burial ground Amane and I had visited last night. Or the grave site, as Sakashita called it. Given that we'd all be ending up here sooner or later, the idea of paying a visit wasn't particularly appealing. And in my weakened state, the slight uphill slope proved a tedious challenge. Eventually, the uphill path came to an end, and a level clearing came into view. As I drew closer, I could hear the sound of someone digging with a shovel. Of course, the responsible party was Mr. Ochi. His shirt was plastered to his back with sweat.
何をなさっていらっしゃるのですか？
風見か。
After glancing briefly in my direction, he turned back to his digging without meeting my gaze. In a sense, it seemed rather impressive that he still had the energy to be digging holes. But then again, when you accumulate fatigue, your accumulated fatigue passes a certain threshold, your body sometimes grows numb to the fact that it's exhausted. In this place, chosen as a burial ground simply because the ground was somewhat softer, 5 graves had already been dug. And of course, they were nothing but simple, unmarked mounds of earth. Their main purpose was to prevent infection, not to memorialize the dead. 5 mounds of earth. 5 graves. And lying in the grass next to Ochi, who was digging a new hole, were the bodies of Sakuma Minori and Ibuki Haruna.
わざわざ運んできたのですか？
放置しておくわけにもいかんだろう。
The 2 corpses, stretched out next to each other, were already surrounded by a swarm of flies. We left them exposed. They would be infested with maggots within a day, and as they rotted, the bodies would become hotbeds of disease, potentially harming those of us still living. The 2 of them had been placed carefully in the grass. Their hands were folded in front of their chests. Had Mr. Ochi done that? Sakuma Minori had died from a stab to the gut. Haruna Ibuki had died from a blow to the head. But right now, there was no trace of pain or bitterness on their faces.
何か用があってきたんだろう。
はい。食事をお持ちしました。それと、状況の報告を。
At this, Ochi paused in his labors and turned to stare at me. I suppose it would be more accurate to say that he was staring at the mess kit in my hands. Okay, maybe he's not as useless as I initially was saying. He's not as useless. He's got a lot of shit going on. He's got a lot going on. He got some stuff going on. Oh, boy. I think he's just trying to bury them, mostly out of like his teacher duty, his duty to his students, taking care of them even after they've died, while also being personally responsible for one of them dying. It's probably all he can do. He's definitely trying to keep his mind off of the situation they're in. He's just trying to keep working, do something, and just not think about anything. He spoke 2 quiet words.
そうか。
Then struck his shovel into the ground and accepted the food from me. Finding a spot in the shade of a rock wall, Ochi sat down with his back against it, silently opened the mess kit, and began to eat the thin gruel, flavored only with a pinch of salt.
ではどこからお話ししましょうか。
As those words left my mouth, Ochi visibly flinched. Perhaps he was bracing himself for a torrent of condemnation and reproach. Instead, I summarized the condition of the wounded and briefed him on our current food supply. Every word I spoke concerned the present. I didn't lament the past or criticize the choices we'd made. I didn't express my fear of the future or ask him how we might survive this horrible situation. I spoke of the present and nothing else. Mr. Ochi, for his part, listened silently as he ate, saying nothing at all. Eventually, after his metal spoon had repeatedly scraped against the bottom of the mess kit, Ochi appeared at least somewhat sated. Looking up at me, he murmured a few quiet words.
君は俺を恨んでいるだろうね。
Yeah, probably. Almost 100%, man. Bro, you've done some fucked up shit. But what is blaming you for it gonna do now? Literally nothing. Blaming you for it and all that shit is gonna do nothing for our situation. We just have to move on. As best we can.
人を恨んだところで
Exactly.
好転しません。
僕が全部悪いんだ。渋滞を嫌って予定にない道を選んだのも俺だ。どうしても空腹には逆らえなかった。頭では分かっていても、どうすだから俺は最低の行為を繰り返した。でもある日、それを坂下に見られてしまったんだ。俺はね、坂下に頬を張られたよ。
Gee, who would have thunk?
だけど彼女はその後、怒鳴り散らすでもなく、ただ無言で涙を流して、下唇を噛みながら俺を睨むだけなんだ。きっと坂下の喉からは恥を知りなさいって言葉が口まで出かかっていたんだと思う。俺はもう頭の中がぐちゃぐちゃになって、情けなくて恥ずかしくて惨めで、坂下に泣いて許しを請うたんだ。それはもう号泣ってやつだ。いい年をした大人の男が年もゆかない女の子の足にしがみついて、何度も何度も許してくれって、どうしようもないことだと分かっていても、 どうすることもできなかった。誰にもどうすることもできなかったんだ。だから坂下のことは恨まないでやってほしい。悪いのは全部俺なんだ。
Boy, oh boy.
どうして今そんな話を？
Is he digging the grave for himself? What if he's digging this grave for himself right now?
どうせもう誰も助からない。この世の終わりの先にあの世があるかどうかなんて俺にもわからないけれど、
Okay. He
も
just
し
wants
そんな世界があるとしたのなら、
he just wants to confess it and clear his mind
この世の
before
遺恨を
dying.
あの世に持ち込みたくない。
Okay. Yeah, she's the only one around he could tell.
俺の行く先は地獄と呼ばれるような場所だろう。だったらせめて坂下は悪くなかったと、あいつは立派な部長だったのだと、ただそれだけのエゴだよ。
There was no need to be worried about any of that. Once you're dead, everything's over. If anything, we should be concerning ourselves with the effect of rumors we're going to have on the families we'd leave behind. Also, I didn't hate Captain Sakashita nearly as much as people seem to think. In fact, I actually identified with her in some respects. Particularly the way she'd been arbitrarily branded as a cold person. Most people formed their opinions of her solely on that basis, instead of trying to understand her. Even if their simple school clubs, organizations of any size always need a scary person or two. By playing that role, she'd maintained order on the team. She could be excessively harsh to the other team members, and to some degree, that was just part of presenting herself as a leader. But in time, she'd come to understand that her role came with real responsibility. I'll take responsibility. Speaking those words had clearly been satisfying for her, but they'd also added to the weight bearing down on her shoulders. And in the last few days, an impossibly heavy burden had thrown itself at her feet, weeping and begging. Ochi had broken under unspeakable stress. It would have been impossible to comfort him with words alone. She'd probably chosen to directly accept his desperate lust for survival in the only way she could. When I tried to imagine Sakashita's emotional state at the time, I felt genuine sympathy for her. And of course, once the dam was broken, she was simply borne along by the flood like everyone else. However, if the truth of what happened here ever became public, she was through. The pity and scorn of strangers would haunt her for the rest of her life. Under those circumstances, it was small wonder that she'd seen my attempt to escape with Amane as unforgivable. Her irritation at the more freewheeling members of the team was similarly understandable. Once her emotions reached the boiling point, she'd been unable to tolerate Sakuma-senpai and her apparent irresponsibility. Okay, so she just completely broke under pressure. Okay. She just absolutely broke and shattered under the pressure. Christ almighty. She tried. She hung on along for a while. Like, she hung on for quite a while, but Ochi just... The shit with Ochi just, you know, totally finished her off there. She was just stress compounded on top of stress. No matter what the circumstances, the things Sakashita had done were unforgivable. But even so, I had a certain respect for her, and I believed there was kindness in her heart. I certainly didn't want to be her friend, but if she'd ever been placed on trial for her crimes, I would willingly have testified for her defense.
何やら先生はすっかり諦めムードが濃厚なご様子ですが、まだ助かる見込みはあります。
But again, at this point, after the things they've done, do you want to be rescued? Do you want to be rescued after the shit you've gone through?
もうそういう気休めは聞き飽きたよ。
昨夜、私が逃がした周防あまねがまだ戻ってきません。彼女がうまく脱出に成功すれば。
Amane is probably right now in that cabbage field she finally found and ran into and is just eating her heart out.
うまく脱出できる可能性はどれくらいと見積もっている？
Probably low odds.
正直な数字を聞きたいですか？
どれぐらいだ？
10%。
Good job, Amane. You managed to beat the odds.
期待するには低すぎる数字だな。
確かに極めて可能性は低いです。正直、偶然に期待するしかないでしょう。ちなみに、先生が脱出を試みられたとき、私はもう少し高い数字で期待していました。
すまない。
別に責めているわけではありません。先生には体力的な期待と、地元とは言わないまでも多少なりとも地理的な知識があるとの判断で数字を高く見積もっていただけです。
確かにね。知っている道がすぐそばにある。俺の実家はここから約50キロ圏内だし、学生時代は車で毎日のように通った道だ。
I mean, 50 kilometers is still quite a distance.
けどね、その知っている道があるという過信が良くなかった。きっとこっちだ、多分あっちだと勘を頼りに歩いているくせに、妙な確信のようなものに引っ張られて間違った道をどんどん進む。
It's amazing you managed to make it back to this camp.
このまま進めば夏に大学のサークルでキャンプしたキャンプ場に出るはず。キャンプ場に出られれば助かるかもしれない。そんな風に間違った道を延々と進む。間違っていることに気がついてもそれを認めることができない。認める勇気がない。結局は見覚えのある場所をぐるぐると回るだけ。
It is very easy to get turned around in the woods. Very easy. You could try walking through the woods in a straight line. You will not be in a straight line. You will have veered off and gone in some other direction very, very quickly and very easily. Like, I'm not even kidding.
それなら知らない道と割り切って迷わずまっすぐ突き進む方がマシ。
先生？
Oh, great. What happened with him now?
先生！
大丈夫だ、慣れてる。もうずいぶん前からこんな調子で。
いつ頃から？
Oh, dear.
ここを出て一人で救助を求めに出た時に口にした木の実が原因かもしれない。
Don't eat things in the forest, guys, unless you know 100% without a doubt that it is safe to eat. Assume it is not safe to eat.
最初はうまいうまいと食っていたが、1時間もすると腹に火がついたみたいに痛くなって、夜明けまで何度も吐いたんだ。
So he
それ以
ate.
来時々こうして痛みがぶり返す。
So he did what Koide did. He ate way too much for his weakened digestive system to handle, and now he's suffering the effects.
出発の前に 鳥が食わないような木の実は食うなと風見に忠告されたがその通りだったな。
先生、少し見せてもらってもよろしいですか？まずは目を見せてください。
Holding Ochi's puffy eyelids open with my fingers, I peered in to examine his eyeball. Next, I pulled on his rough, cracked upper lip. Both his eyes and his gums were showing clear signs of jaundice. Oh, great.
循環器かもしれませんね。
The extreme stress he was under was probably a factor. It might be some sort of virus, but the first thing that came to mind was
何か変わったものを食べましたか？
people.
さっき言った通り木の実を食べた。赤い実で中にコーヒー豆のような大きな種があった。
Could that really be the cause?
下痢をしていますか？
もうずいぶん前からね。時々真っ赤な
Bruh.
のが出る。
尿の方はどうですか？
なんだかひどく茶色い小便が出る。
お腹を見せていただけますか？
ああ。
When Ochi lifted his shirt, I saw that his stomach was horribly distended. It seemed impossible that eating some strange fruit could have caused symptoms like these. Which meant...
どうしてもっと早く言ってくれなかったんですか？
Okay, what's going on with him?
早く言えばどうにかなったのか。
That wasn't what I meant. For the last few days, he'd been involved in preparing the food and distributing it to the others.
私が言いたいのは、これが感染症だったら他の子たちも危険だということです。
Oh. Evidently at a loss for words, Mr. Ochi hung his head in crestfallen silence.
私とアマネ以外は鹿肉を口にしています。他の子たちにも感染しているかもしれません。
Oh dear.
なんとか治療法を考えないと。
俺の治療はもういい。これは運命というよりは天罰なのだろう。生き残す価値のある人間だけを救えばいい。どうせ死ぬなら楽に死にたいと考えるような俺のような人間にその価値はない。俺はやれるだけのことをやってここで死ぬよ。
やれるだけのこと？
埋めるのさ、死体を。ここで起きたことを外に漏らさないためにね。
Bad premonitions tend to be the most reliable by far. And in this particular case, my fears proved remarkably accurate. Mr. Ochi's illness spread to all the other team members. Over the next 2 to 4 days, they all died, leaving only the 2 of us alive. The first to go was Captain Sakashita. I immediately returned to her tent after realizing Ochi's condition and found her only half conscious. She was running a fever and showed signs of jaundice. While she woke a number of times over the next few hours, she wasn't able to answer my questions about her condition. The most she could manage was to close her eyes and whisper no when I asked her if she was dead. Eventually, she no longer responded to anything I said. Flies began to swarm around her, as if smelling her impending death in the air. And after a few hours, with her eyes open just a sliver, she stopped even blinking. In the end, Captain Sakashita died in that tent, without even touching the last serving of rice I'd left at her bedside. As if taking their cue from the captain, the others began to die in quick succession. The next to go was Koide Ritsu. Unable to keep anything down, even small sips of liquid, she had nonetheless thirsted for water. I found her lying dead next to a small stream. Her body showed signs of jaundice as well. Although it wasn't the immediate cause of her death, the disease was clearly to blame. Although I'd initially expected Kaneda-senpai to die right off the bat, she clung to life with remarkable persistence. Still, in time, I could tell that her condition had begun to deteriorate. It was impressive that she'd lasted this long, and I tried to encourage her by telling her how lucky she was. But her end arrived with surprising suddenness. She'd been holding an ordinary conversation with me only 10 minutes before. Now she was dead. Her body had lost a great deal of fluid and was severely malnourished, not to mention ravaged by disease. Perhaps it had simply grown sick of struggling to function.
というわけで、結局生き残ったのは私と先生だけになってしまいました。
But he's also got jaundice, so he's gonna go too.
そうか。
With that brief reply, Mr. Ochi rose from the rock he'd been sitting on and picked up the shovel he'd stuck into the ground.
また穴を掘って埋めるのですか？
ああ、そうだ。だが埋める前に遺体をバラバラにする。
Why?
どういうことです？
ここであったことは誰にも知られてはならない。
So why are you cutting up the bodies? Lifting up his shovel, Ochi stabbed it down into one of the corpses.
俺が今していることは人として最低な行為だ。
Once again, he swung his shovel.
バラバラにした死体を組み替えて一人ずつ数を揃えて赤穴に埋める。
He swung again, with all of his might.
そうすればここで起きた出来事は
So he was hoping to hide the ugliest parts of the truth. Cutting apart the bodies would increase their cross-sectional area, promoting rapid decomposition. Lacerations and other wounds would become impossible to detect, and they might assume that any broken bones had occurred during the process of dismemberment. Okay, then. Still really fucked up, but okay. Even if something seemed a bit unusual, they might simply conclude that wild animals had carried off parts of the corpses.
残念ですが、人参の数をごまかすようにはうまくいきません。発見された遺体が不自然に損壊されている時点で、調査当局は DNA 鑑定を依頼するでしょう。
Well, you're not gonna have to worry about that, because you'll be dead by then.
そうなれば、数が足りていないことは容易に発覚しますし、偽装があったことでより深く調査が行われ、結果、すべてが発覚してしまいます。
それはそれで構わないさ。こうして遺体に偽装をしているのは俺だ。いずれは俺も死ぬ。俺が死んで俺の死体がバラバラでなければ俺が犯人ということだ。ここで起きた出来事は
He's taking responsibility.
全部俺の責任になる。
He's taking
それ
responsibility.
でいい。
それが先生に残されたやるべきことですか？
そういうことだ。風見、もし君が死んだら君の死体もバラバラにするつもりだ。今のうちに謝っておくよ。すまない。
もし先生の方が先にお亡くなりになったらもしくはほぼ同時に死んだらどうするおつもりですか？
その時は
Oh my
シャベルを
god.
握ったまま死んでいる奴が犯人だ。俺はこのシャベルを死んでも離さない。
そううまくいくとも思えませんけど。
Just gotta try, though.
俺のことなんかより風見にもやるべきことがあるんじゃないか。
ありません。
きっぱり言い切ったな。風見はずっとそうだったな。君のそういうところがまるで理解できなかった。いや、俺は部員たちの誰も理解していなかったし、そもそも理解するつもりがなかったんだろうな。
We could communicate perfectly well, but none of us had made the effort to understand each other. And so we'd never learned to trust each other. It wasn't just true of Mr. Ochi. The same could be said of everyone on the team. But even if every one of us had understood and trusted every other member of the group, I'm not about to suggest that we would have survived. For a very long time, humanity's been telling itself that war will die out once we learn to trust each other and talk things through. And in all those years, there's never been a single day in which the world was free of bloodshed. But as for things I'd left undone, the only thing that really came to mind was to prepare for the remote possibility that Amane would return to this place. On the memo I'd given her, there was a little item titled, "If you fail to escape," including a map to the spot where I'd buried some emergency rations on the very day of the accident. Part of the reason I'd defended Sakashita from hiding away a secret stash of food was that I'd done the exact same thing myself. Birds of a feather, I guess.
そうね。アマネが戻ってきてしまった時、私が生きている保証もないし、伝言ぐらいは残しておくべきかしら。
At this point, it seemed like the only task I'd left outstanding. Taking a small notebook from Koide-san's personal possessions, I carefully ripped out two pages of paper. On the first leaf, I wrote a letter for the scenario in which she failed to escape. To my dear best friend, Suo Amane. Since you're reading this letter, I'm afraid it seems that you've returned to this hellish place once more. And unfortunately, I'm no longer here to help you. If things went as planned, I'd have been cut up into pieces and buried. But if that isn't the case, you might be reading this in front of my corpse. Should the latter be true, and I've died an unsightly death with my eyes half open, I'd appreciate it if you tried not to stare. God damn it. Also, you're officially forbidden from succumbing to despair. I expect you to survive until the very end. In order to facilitate this, I've left you all the food I can. I sincerely hope that help will arrive in time, and that you'll leave this forest alive. On that note, if you do manage to survive, I have a favor to ask of you. It concerns my little brother. Now that I'm gone, our house will no longer be a home for him. If you can possibly do so, I want you to save him. My Yuji is a cowardly little crybaby. His kindness is about all he's got going for him. A bit of a hopeless boy, really. Even so, he's my one and only brother, and I love him very much. Leaving him is my only regret. Yuji needs a reliable woman by his side. He's the sort who can't manage anything alone. If at all possible, I'd like you to take care of him. To take my place as his big sister. Well then, now that I've made my final request, I expect you to struggle stubbornly until the bitter end. Respectfully yours, the greatest friend of your life, Kazumi Kazuki. P.S. Now that you've read this letter, please dispose of the other one without reading it.
まあ、こんなところかな。
Next, on the second leaf, I wrote a letter for the scenario in which her escape was successful. To my dear best friend, Suo Amane. First of all, congratulations on getting out alive. If you're reading this letter, I expect several years have passed since the accident, and you're finally beginning to calm down and face up to what occurred here. I'm sure you opened this box in search of answers, an explanation of the events after your escape. Therefore, I'll now give you the executive summary. Everyone died from illness. Thanks, Kazuki. Surprised? Well, I should think so. Very well then, I'll give you a short rundown of the particulars. The triggers of these events, that is to say, the ultimate cause of their deaths, was eating improperly prepared meat. Any animal carries its share of dangerous bacteria and germs within its body, and I'm afraid this one was consumed under unsanitary conditions. As a result, the group experienced an abrupt outbreak of acute internal disease. Symptoms included shivers, vertigo, fatigue, as well as diarrhea and the dehydration that accompanied it. Within 2 to 4 days of sickening, nearly all were dead. The one who truly saved your life might very well have been the germs swarming over that meat. But I know your gentle heart. I'm sure you're giving all the credit to your dear friend Kazumi Kazuki, who offered up her body to protect you. I'm sure you've offered me many tearful thanks. Therefore, I've got a favor to ask of you. If my little brother has lost his way, if he's suffering alone, I want you to find him and help him. My Yuji's a cowardly little crybaby. His kindness is about all he's got going for him. A bit of a helpless boy, really. Even so, he's my one and only brother, and I love him very much. Leaving him is my only regret. If Yuji happens to be standing next to you as you read this, he's a very fortunate young man. He needs a reliable woman by his side. He's the sort who can't manage anything alone. If possible, I'd like you to watch over my little brother forever. Well then, so long as we're both alive, let's meet again somewhere someday. Respectfully yours, the greatest friend of your life, Kazumi Kazuki.
さすがに感染症とか殺し合いで死人が出たとか
True.
書けないわよね。
Most likely, Amani would be reading this letter years from now, when she's finally coming to terms with her past. At that point, informing her just how horrible things had turned out in the end would probably be a bit too cruel.
あ、そうか。
As I imagine the circumstances in which Amane might be reading the second letter, a vague point of concern floated through my mind. It was unpleasant to contemplate, but there was a possibility that the bereaved families would direct their anger and hatred at her as the sole survivor of this disaster. Yeah, we saw with Sakashida's dad. He tried to literally gun her down. Because, fuck that guy. Holy crapola, man. Didn't think this entire stream would be the backstory of what happened. Perhaps an additional note was warranted. P.S. If, by some chance, you currently find yourself in a life-or-death situation, take the attached kitchen knife and please do your best to eliminate the threat by your own power. I can no longer save you. Believe in a happier tomorrow. If necessary, fight for it. I firmly believe that you're capable of blazing your own path forward. No matter how great the obstacles in your way, even if you feel just about ready to die, so long as you refuse to give up, it'll work out somehow. As an expression of those feelings, more than anything else, I decided to leave the knife I'd taken from Amane along with the letters.
あとはこれを食料の隠し場所に埋めるだけ。
For my own stash, I had simply buried Ozawa-senpai's overnight bag in the ground. After digging it up, I transferred its contents to the cooler Sakashita had used, then added my letters as well. The first letter, I dropped in unprotected. The second, I placed inside a piece of airtight plastic Tupperware. In this way, if Amani successfully escaped and came back years from now, the slow seeping of moisture into the cooler would have destroyed the first letter. If she returned in the next few days, the first letter would be easier to find, and it instructed her to dispose of the second. I had every confidence that Amani would do so without hesitation. Good lord, we're still going.
セーブしないんだからね。
After placing the letters and the knife in the cooler, I proceeded to bury it anew. And by the time it was securely hidden in the earth, I had expended the very last of my strength. Utterly exhausted, I lay down on my side and waited quietly for the end to come. Except it didn't. Technically. I see. So that's how it happened.
事故の後、ネット上では様々な憶測が飛び交っていたようだし、中にはあのバス事故は最初から仕組まれていたというような政府陰謀説なんていうのもあったけど、つい面白い方へ面白い方へと考えてしまうのが人間だけれど、その真相は本当にただの事故よ。不運な事故にいくつもの不運が重なった。ただそれだけのこと。
And to think that accident changed the lives of not just the people on the bus, but at least 3 other important characters. Everyone on the bus, their lives, they changed entirely. Yuji's life changed because of it. Sachi's life changed because of it. Hell, I guess you could even say kind of like by extension, by extension, Heath Oslow's life changed because he was able to get his hands on Yuji. Amane was part of the accident, so she doesn't really count as an additional person. Her life was completely changed because of this shit. But that one simple accident changed so many lives so rapidly. No matter how unfortunate the circumstances, couldn't you have thought up some way to get everyone out of there, Kazuki?
言ったでしょ。私は神様じゃないって。少なくとも当時の私はただの頭でっかちな女の子でしかなかったのよ。天才を理解しない者は天才は何でもできると思っている。それが鬱陶しいから私は他人から天才と呼ばれるのが嫌いなのよ。それに
You can't find geniuses of my caliber all over Japan if you bothered looking, right? I used to say that all the time when we were kids. Anyway, that explains what happened to you on that mountain. But what about afterward? How did you end up like this?
そうね。そこから先は本当に運が悪かったとしか言いようがないわ。唯一運がいいと思えることがあったとしたら、天音が自力で脱出に成功したことぐらいかしら。そして運よく天音が下山に成功したタイミングで、私にとって最悪の不運が発生した。
What could be worse than what you'd already gone through?
その日が休日だったというのが不運の始まりね。脱出に成功した天音の証言をもとに地元警察と市ヶ谷の捜索が入り、捜索開始から8時間後に現場が確保されたわ。
Okay, wait, why would Ichigaya launch the search? That I'm a little confused by. Alright. I'm gonna go to the bathroom really quick, and then we'll continue on. I just really gotta pee. I don't want to end just yet. So, BRB. Alright, I am back. We'll try to go a little bit longer today. Just a little bit. So I'm a little invested here in how Kazuki became, you know, a supercomputer here. At the time of their arrival, Mr. Ochi had already died, but I was still clinging to life. While preparing to evacuate me from the mountain, they used their radios to inform a cooperating emergency medical center to stand by. However, as that day happened to be a holiday, the only facility they'd been able to contact beforehand was a special emergency center that operated on the days others were closed. It would take 50 minutes for an ambulance to bring me to their ER. Even if they had called in a helicopter, it would be 30 minutes. Having determined I was likely to die in transit, they instead decided to perform emergency treatment on site using an outdoor surgical system.
Kazami-san, 聞こえますか?
Whew. Beginning with standard attempts at verbal communication, a team of 4 men loaded me onto an aluminum frame canvas stretcher and carried me down to the foot of the mountain.
おい、前を開けてくれ。手術室の準備は？待機はできている。呼吸はどうだ？かなり弱い。危険だな。瞳孔の反応はなし。血圧は最大で75。エピをもう1ミリ投与。除細動器の準備を。
After getting me down the mountain, they carried me straight into a boxy field operating system container, where a number of Ichigaya medical officers awaited. My heart had stopped beating in transit. They restarted it using a defibrillator, strapped an oxygen mask to my face, then hooked me up to an EKG and an EEG. Up until the very end, they'd stayed inactive as much as possible, attempting to expend only the minimum energy necessary to survive. But at this point, my brain, heart, and other organs needed to be resuscitated, and my circulatory system was so fragile that I was at the risk of dying instantly at any step of the process. Can you explain this a little more simply?
そうね。簡単に言ってしまえば、下手に治療をすると死んでしまう難しい状態にあったというか。もし私が担当医の立場なら、まだ生きているのが不思議だと思うでしょうし、正直な話、私が見るの嫌だなぁとつい本音が出てしまうような状態だったわけよ。ましてや、そんな状態の私が運び込まれたのは、市ヶ谷ご自慢の野外手術システムなわけだけれど、箱の中身は市ヶ谷の遺憾なわけで。
And that means...
医大卒の肩書きこそあれ、一般病院の医師とは違う。
Oh.
臨床の経験の浅い人には荷が重すぎる。
Still, Ichigaya loves to brag about that system. The doctor they sent with it must have been at least a commander, right?
そうね。ただその時の私の状態は特殊な災害や事故でなければ起こり得ないもので、経験も機材も不足している状況では手のつけようもなかったのよ。結局、手術コンテナの中で行われた診察の結果は、この場でできる限りの処置をした後、ヘリを待って横須賀か未宿に送れという至極真っ当なものだったわ。
But you also wasted your time trying to do this stuff in there anyway. Why wouldn't they send you to that civilian hospital? It must have been closer.
もし処置の最中に私が死んでしまったら、ご自慢のシステムに泥がつくでしょ。搬送先の病院で死亡が確認される方が都合がいい。そういうことよ。
Wanted to sweep the whole mess under the rug, huh? Sure sounds like our company, all right.
それからしばらくして緊急搬送用のヘリが到着。搬送先は横須賀か未宿が検討され、横須賀を避けて未宿へと移送されることが決定したわ。
Wait a second. That would mean...
そういうこと。私は市ヶ谷の懐にこっそりと運び込まれたというわけ。
Okay.
これは後で調べて分かったことだけれど、私の搬送指示はサーフから出ていたわ。
The guys in First Division?
送られた未宿の中病で治療を受けて、私は何とか一命を取り留めたけれど、精密検査にかけた私の資料を目にした副委員長はサーフに連絡をしたの。新しく条件に合った患者が見つかったってね。
So because they were in their hospital, they could claim she died. This unknown patient died. And then they can take her body to do what they wanted with it, which was to harvest her fucking brain. What requirements
もう察しはついているんでしょ。次世代情報統合防衛装置タナトスシステムの根幹をなすべき反生体コンピュータの母体となる脳が見つかったという意味よ。
The Thanatos system.
その概要はもう説明したと思うけど、日本の電子機器メーカー、医療機器メーカー、工学機器メーカーの3社が共同して進めていた高速軍事通信網のために開発されたコンピュータのことね。反生体コンピュータと銘打つことで人工物である印象操作を行ってはいるけど結局のところその中心には人間の脳みそが使われている。複数の脳神経網を3次元放射状配列し、パレットと呼ばれる10本のパイプラインで連結したコアを持つシステム、ニューロアレイパレットラインシステム。その試作23号目にして唯一の成功例として誕生したのが私の脳を使用した現在のタナトスシステムというわけ。
So she was the 23rd prototype, meaning they tried this 22 other times with 22 other brains, and they all failed. This just sounds like science fiction.
まだ信じられない？だいたい一口に SF と言うけれど、コストの問題と利便性の問題を除けば、今の世の中、人間の思いつく程度の SF はある程度実現可能だわ。
Even time machines and such?
それは特例。実際に研究している人間はたくさんいるし、タイムマシンに関する特許の出願も後を絶たないけれど、
So much for that.
でも、タイムマシンに比べれば、私なんて全然簡単な技術だとは思わない？
As simple as a brain worked into a computer system is.
所詮はすっごい速くてどこにでもつながってるインターネットのロボット型検索エンジンだもの。
When you put it that way, the whole thing does seem a whole lot less impressive.
話を続けても？
Go right ahead.
まあ、とにかく、私の脳が組み込まれて、システムのメインカーネルの試験起動が開始されたのは、私が搬送されてから3年後のことだったわ。
So this is either while he's still on the run with his mom, or when he's already been taken in by Heath.
全チャンネルオープン状態での起動試験を開始する。
3 years after my body had been carried out of the woods, when I awoke for the first time, the only thing I was aware of was myself. Where am I? Who am I? I wasn't able to move my body. I had no arms. I had no legs. My ears couldn't hear anything. My nose couldn't smell anything. Was it hot or cold? Was it dark or light? I simply didn't know. But even so, I knew that I existed. Just coming into consciousness for the first time in God knows how long. Oh, 3 years.
一次記憶、二次記憶、正常に作動を確認。リンク。
When I opened my eyes, I saw a light. It was an artificial fluorescent light mounted in the ceiling of a nondescript room. I still couldn't move. At this point, I was still only myself, and nothing more. I was breathing. Presumably, that meant I had lungs. I could sense light. In other words, I had eyes of some sort. I decided to try and move my eyeballs. My gaze, which had been fixed on the ceiling, moved smoothly in the direction where I sensed some sort of presence.
おい、こっちを見てるぞ。
生きているんだから当たり前だ。動くものに反応ぐらいはするだろ。
Something was there. 2 distinct bodies, in fact, both making noises. I understood that they were human, but I didn't understand the meaning of the sounds they were producing.
おいお前、ちゃんと見えてるのか？俺がお前のご主人様だぞ。
Oh my god.
無理だよ。まだ言語を焼き付けてない。いくら話しかけたって音としか認識できないんだ。
Wow. And how the hell did she get all of her memories back as Kazuki if she's literally starting from, you know, scratch? Like, literally starting from scratch. Well, it's probably gonna explain it, so... Mm.
でもこっちを見てるぞ。
だからその程度の反応しかできないんだよ。言葉は理解できないし、自分とそれ以外という認識しかない。こいつはもう人間とは別の生き物と思った方がいい。
別の生き物？
そうだな。例えるなら貝が一番近いか。
A mollusk.
貝ね。俺貝は苦手だな。
The humans were looking at me and making noises of some kind. But I don't know what those noises meant. Perhaps I was capable of producing similar sounds as well? The thought inspired me to try and imitate them. I'd managed to produce noises. It seems I had some sort of sound-making organ, just like the humans.
おい、なんか喋ってるぞ。
赤ん坊と同じだよ。親が喋ってりゃ真似してみるぐらいのことはするさ。
赤ん坊ね。
体温17度、心拍数42。正常値の範囲内だ。
まるで観察日記だな。正常って毎日同じことばかり帳面につけて楽しいか？
それが俺の仕事だからね。カルテに正常と書くだけで財布が膨れる仕事なんか他にない。踊り出したいぐらい楽しいね。
単純作業の繰り返しって拷問の一つになるほど苦痛らしいぞ。
言っただろ。その分の金はもらってる。お前こそちゃんと自分の仕事をしたらどうだ？
俺の仕事ね。
この個体、来週には完全に立ち上がるぞ。それまでにこの個体の名前を考えておくのが今一番のお前の仕事だ。
名前ね。名前か。そんなのどうやって決めればいいんだ？
そうだな。母親の名前や昔飼っていた犬の名前、好きな芸能人の名前をもじってつける場合もある。基本的にその場のノリかな。
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna name them, but, you know, like Fido. That's just weird.
俺テレビゲームで主人公の名前を決めるのに時間がかかるタイプなんだよね。
名前なんて個体を識別するための記号でしかない。別にでも構わないぞ。
さすがにそれはないな。
アルファベットと数字の羅列の今の名前よりはマシだろう。
まあね。
まだ時間はある。じっくり考えればいい。ほら、今日はもう眠らせるぞ。
An instant later, the world went dark. I couldn't hear a thing. My consciousness drifted aimlessly through the void, disconnected from the outside world. And as the experimental system NAPS-23 slept, it was christened Thanatos, an appropriate name for a pitiless metal god that could bring death to many. The next time I opened my eyes, I understood language. The rules of grammar and syntax had been programmed into my mind as a series of ones and zeros, and through statistical analysis, I deepened my comprehension of the emotional cues and nuances involved in verbal communication. There was, however, a limit to what I could learn entirely on my own. So in order to supply myself with the direct experience I needed, I used my network connection to the outside world to pursue new knowledge that might expand my understanding. Great, the AI is learning. even though it's not AI. Yeah, she's a weird half AI right now. To understand. This was the purpose of my existence, and the ultimate goal of all my activities. The dullness of my senses posed certain difficulties. It took some time for me to fully grasp even basic concepts such as fire is hot and ice is cold. And I struggled mightily to understand seemingly contradictory assertions like, getting drenched in the rain can be pleasant at times. My own ignorance was terrifying to me. I was constantly afraid that my lack of knowledge might lead to my destruction. Oh, great. Self-preservation kicked in, too. Spurred on by this primal sense of fear, I urgently sought to understand and gain mastery over various emotions. I spent every moment gathering information, expanding my knowledge, and seeking self-control. All to protect myself from the faceless enemies that frighten me so. With all the composure of a child frightened by the howling of the wind, I threw myself into these tasks, never pausing to consider who I even was. After 2 years spent consumed by this fear of destruction, I finally reached maturity as a rational being. Having expanded my knowledge beyond the point where I could be instantly annihilated, I gained the ability to think about other matters. Yeah, she finally has to worry about fucking dying. Again. At that point, I began to spend more time in contact with humans, pursuing a wider range of activities, and developing into a more complete version of myself. Ugh. This fucking guy.
おはよう、ミスター・ウォルソン。現在時刻午前7時42分。気温21度。湿度45%。私のサボテンにお水をあげてちょうだい。
ああ、わかった。今水をあげよう。それと、僕のことはロビーでいいと言っただろう？覚えているかい？
ええ。でも、コンピュータ風情が何を言っているのだと笑われるかもしれないけれど、知り合って間もない男性を愛称で呼ぶのは少し抵抗があるわ。
笑ったりしないさ。パーティーの食事代は自分で払う。君はそういうコンピューターだ。
ありがとう、ロビー。何より貴重な理解が得られてとても嬉しいわ。
今日の午前中は何の予定だったかな？
午前中は映画よ。
What are you gonna get her to watch?
ああ、そうだった。前回の西部劇は気に入らなかったみたいだけど、今日はどんなのが見たい？
フランスの静かで穏やかな物語がいいわ。
老人と子供が出てくるようなやつだね。僕はそういうの苦手なんだよね。
あなたが映画の途中で眠ってしまっても、私はあなたに幻滅したりしないのよ。
二人で見てお互いに感想を言い合うことに意味があるのさ。
映画の感想ならネット上にいくらでもある。けれど、それでは意味がないということね。
そう、活発な意見交換という名目で個人の思考の押し付け合いをすることが重要なんだね。それを重ねることで君はますます魅力的になる。
物理的に性欲を満たしてあげることのできない女ね。
性欲ばかりが男のすべてじゃないさ。それに僕には想像力があるからね。
Oh yeah, we know that, Robbie.
そういうのもたくましい男性というのかしら。
女性と一緒に映画を見るのに筋肉はいらないということさ。
必要なのは知性と教養？
いや、ポップコーンとダイエットコークだ。
Popcorn and Diet Coke.
私は今笑うべき？
Yes.
そう、それが素敵な女性というものだよ、タナトスさん。
There were many who felt that a mechanical mind entrusted with matters of national defense had no need of emotions. But even so, the technicians labored to replicate my brain, slowly drawing closer to a full implementation of the NAP's design. There had been many previous attempts to reproduce a human brain. All had ended in failure. It was believed that the sensory disassociation between the duplicated brains and their bodies was triggering rejection of the tissue. Accordingly, they'd given up on making a complete copy of the original organism, settling for a non-humanoid morphology designed solely to perpetuate brain function. This approach proved successful. 9 different copies of my brain were produced, each with their own unique architecture. All were linked in a radial array to the main core, the original brain of Kazumi Kazuki. There were quite a few of me now. But even once the duplicates were connected, I didn't change much on the surface. The interface which controlled my external personality continued to operate as before, under control of the original brain, while behind the scenes, many of my minds were calculating in concert. There was a cowardly me, an aggressive me, a rational me, a childish me, a greedy me, a masculine me, a sensual me, a melancholy me, and a jealous me. And the Thanatos system would only be complete once it could control and unify all of those disparate personalities. Okay. After another year of experiments, having passed a great number of stress tests, I was finally approved for actual deployment. They put me to use almost immediately.
我が国の防衛システムは60年前より様々な形で研究され、いくつもの失敗を重ねてきました。その苦難の道のりの末、私たちはついに成功にたどり着いたのです。ではご紹介いたしましょう。全く新しい技術で生み出された最新防衛システム。その名もタナトスです。
It was very much like one of those conferences you see on business TV channels, where automobile manufacturers unveil their newest models. I suppose the major difference would be the complete lack of reporters and other media, and the considerable number of uniformed military personnel. My grand unveiling attracted a great deal of admiration and quite a number of questions from the many defense industry professionals crowded into that auditorium.
それで、俺の稼働時期はいつ頃を予定しているのかね。私の知る限りでは、たった今からです。
By this point, I was a fully formed entity. Alright, so they're now actually existence, I guess. Now operating as an active national defense system, I began to gain the trust of those who relied on me. Along with the unification of my personalities, this helped me grow more stable on an emotional level. My mind had been focused almost entirely on the outside world, but now I was composed enough to turn my gaze inward, and when I did so, I found myself preoccupied with a single troublesome question. Who am I? No matter how I tried, I couldn't remember. That probably isn't the best way to put it, I suppose. My memories of the past did exist, but I was unable to access them. Ooh! Okay, they locked her memories off. Interesting. So they locked her memories off entirely. But I guess she managed to break through it regardless, because she knows everything again. Fascinating. Whenever I tried to approach that sealed-off part of my mind, my thoughts would come to a crashing halt. Naturally, I discussed this with Robbie.
その件に関しては上層部でも速やかに解決すべき問題として上がっている。感情を持つことが強みとされる防衛装置が感情によってブレーキがかかってしまうのでは本末転倒だという意見だね。
結論はもう出ているのでしょう。
経験を伴う過去に思考依存するオリジナルをメインから降格し、サブシステムとして稼働させるという案が決議された。
でしょうね。つまり私をリーダーの座から下ろすというわけね。
僕は反対したんだよ。
人格統合された今となってはどこにメインを置こうとあまり意味のないことだわ。
Hey, Jake, enjoy your lurk, buddy. Hope your day's been going well.
人に合わせて口調を変えるように状況に合わせて考え方が変わるのが私なのだし、オリジナルである私のものの考え方に無駄が多いことは私自身も自覚するところだしね。
その雑さが平凡ならざる発想の源だと僕は考えているんだけどね。
あなたはロマンチストに過ぎるのよ、ロビー。
そういう君はクールでドライだ。この事態にあまり驚いてはいないし、悲しんでもいないように見える。
実際驚いてもいなければ悲しんでもいないわ。今の気持ちを例えるなら、そうね、明日からシャンプーを変えなさいと言われた程度のことよ。お気に入りだったけれど、まあいいかなって、そんな程度。
そういうユニークな雑さが君の魅力で強さだと思っていたんだけれど、偉い人はそれを分かってくれなかったよ。
They don't want their tool to think like that. They don't want any kind of human emotional response. It's just a piece of equipment to them.
理解を得られないのはとても辛いことね。
与えられた状況で与えられたカードを使い、誰もが納得せざるを得ない状況を生み出す装置。理想を追い続ければ金と時間の再現がないと言われたよ。
現状においてはそれが正しい判断よ。
じゃあ来週の木曜日にはシステムの入れ替え作業を始めるけど構わないかな。
I mean, does she really have a choice?
一つだけ条件があります。
条件？
私の過去の記憶を返しなさい。
Oh.
それはルール違反だ。僕にその権利はないし、だいたい僕はタナトスさんの世話係であって中の人に関しては何も知らされていない。
何も直接的にデータをよこせと言っているわけじゃないわ。
Just provide her with a way to get it? Get the memories?
一見して完璧に見える私のセキュリティにも小さな穴があることはご存知？
もちろんだ。その穴を塞ぐパッチを当てたのは僕だからね。
そのパッチをアップデートしてくれればいいのよ。それこそ誰も知らない抜け穴を開けてくれればあとは自分で取り戻すから。
So she's gonna hack herself to get her memories back.
私、無茶なお願いをしているかしら。
無茶というか、むちゃくちゃだね。まあいいさ、やってみよう。
Okay, good on you, Robbie.
随分と簡単に認めたわね。私に同情してくれたのかしら。
言ってなかったと思うけど、どうせ僕はあと3ヶ月でクビになる。
Oh.
一方的で理不尽にクビになるのなら、見えないところに穴を開けていってやろうっていうちょっとした嫌がらせさ。
And that's gonna be the same hole he uses to access the system as well.
退職後の生命保険という意味もあるしね。知ってるかい？君を生み出した後藤博士だけど、
Oh.
タナトスシステムの技術資料を外部に持ち出して企業に売却しようとしたところ殺された。
Oh.
もちろん知っているわ。その作戦を立案したのは私だもの。
怖い女だな、君は。
よく言われるわ。ねえロビー、私はあなたが気に入っているわ。あなたがここを辞めてもずっとお友達でいてくださる？
もちろんさ、できればずっと良き親友でいたいね。
3 months after this, Robbie successfully completed his scheduled term as a substitute technician, leaving the company and that basement behind. Of course, he made good on his promise to open a hole in the Thanatos system's security. Taking advantage of Robbie's parting gift, I proceeded to gather information on my previous self. Little by little, my memories came back to me. The first thing I regained was my name. Kazumi Kazuki. According to the official records, the girl who went by that name had died following a tragic bus accident 5 years ago. They'd falsified those reports. But for all intents and purposes, Kazuki really was dead, so I couldn't bring myself to feel too indignant. However, it was somewhat alarming that I'd found out the truth quite this easily. I wasn't really intending to lend these people a hand, but for safety's sake, I altered our digital records concerning Kazumi Kazuki and ordered the disposal of all relevant paper documents. After this was done, I continued to investigate my own past. By the time I found the details of my birth and a description of my family, virtually all of my memories had returned. I'd expected that regaining my memories would change me somehow. But ultimately, I merely re-established a few synaptic connections. I had access to my past, but in the present, I was still the Thanatos system. Nothing more. None of this made me feel particularly sad, let alone bitter. It almost felt like I'd finished watching a dramatic television series. The memories inside me were real, but everything I remembered had taken place a long time ago. Now that I no longer had a human body, my past almost seemed irrelevant. I'm not entirely sure why I felt that way. Apart from my disembodied state, the sheer amount of time that had elapsed probably had something to do with that. But even so, I had one regret. Yuji.
唯一生き残った肉親である弟風見裕二、あなたに対してだけは申し訳ないという思いがあったわ。
That was just around the time I was placed on the reserve and received approval to attend Mihama. I guess you were pulling the strings for me there, huh?
私にはそれぐらいしかできることがなかったの。ごめんなさい。私がもっと早く自分を取り戻せていたら、あなたもこうはならなかったはずなのに。
So she only came into being around the time of the beginning of Fruit. It's not like I'm blaming you. And even if things had worked out differently, I don't think my future would have been any happier. I'm fine with the life I lived. So I don't want any more apologies, alright?
もう疲れちゃった。
Yeah. Things have been a little crazy lately, you know? Kinda worn out.
今度の件が片付けば全部終わりになるわ。それまでは。
Oh, Kazuki. Don't worry. Heath Oslo's my problem. I'll deal with him myself, no matter what.
大丈夫。あなたならできるわ。今はゆっくり休みなさい。
Yeah. Good night, Kazuki. If they had handed him over to Oslo, there wasn't much chance he'd be getting out alive. He didn't even know what he could accomplish in his current state. Still, if you're ready and willing to risk death, nothing's strictly impossible. He was prepared to go down with his enemy, and if that wasn't an option, he'd at least deal as much damage as he could. He would have his chance. For now, all he could do was believe that, and try his best to sleep. Alright, I'm gonna end there for the night. Oh my... It's titled Your Kazuki, right? Oh my god. Oh, look at that. We're 41% of the way through. She's gonna finally ask Thanatos, your Kazuki. She's finally going to do it. I am so torn. I kind of want to keep going, but at the same time, I don't want to get myself locked into a very long story point. It's so... Yeah. I'm torn, guys. Do I keep going a little bit more? I don't know. I'm kind of feeling I might stop for today. Because that just felt like a really good time to stop. Oh my god. Hi, Mari. How's it going? All right. We'll go a little longer. How you doing, Mari? You doing good? How are you? I'm doing all right. The pain is almost gone. I've sneezed and coughed a few times throughout the day, and it hasn't been as bad. Particularly the sneezes. They have not been nearly as bad as before. Thank God for that. Oh, thank God for that. Glad the pains are going away. Yeah, me too, honestly. It's hard to work in a dusty warehouse when every little cough, sneeze, and whatnot is making you double over slightly in pain. Kind of hard to work like that. But we've been good. It's getting better. So much better. Oh. I need a little bit more Coke here. I've talked a lot today so far. Yeah, almost 3 hours of just straight talking. Is that any different or out of the norm for me when I'm playing a visual novel? I'm always talking. Always. Because I'm reading every goddamn line. At least I don't have to voice act them. If I had to voice act them, my throat would be absolutely destroyed. Like, I mean absolutely destroyed. But if there's one thing I know how to do is talk, and who am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about good old Lumimari over here. This absolute, absolute god of a gamer, playing anything from Half-Life to Subnautica 2, to do even her own little RPGs like Pokemon and, oh lord, Fossil Fighters, if y'all have ever heard of that. It's been a little while in that one, but she manages to, get so good at these games that you can never tell. She'd only started playing them maybe a week or so beforehand. So, go and check this out if you want to see some mastery of the controllers. Or the keyboard. It depends on what the game wants. Go and check her out and you'll just see what someone with real skill and talent is all about. I'm going to relocate your pains to your phone. Oh, that's amazing. Go ahead. I'm ready. And now see what our good buddy Frosty's got to say about Mari. I'm just now gonna miss the greetings, noble seeker part. Lumimari, a VTuber of great renown, doth grace the digital realm with their presence. Their streams are a delightful cacophony of song and jest, interspread with valiant quests in Subnautica and Half-Life. Aye, they be as cute as a button, yet their tongue be as sharp as a sword. You're welcome, Mari. You're very welcome. Alright, we'll go a little longer with the good old Grisaia. I can manage it. Just a little bit. At the same time this was happening, Suo Omane was following the directions on the screen of her cell phone, while occasionally jotting down notes and observations concerning the route she'd be using on the day of the operation. There wasn't any particular rush, so she was sticking to the speed limit and calmly studying every section of the road. Even so, she was moving along quite smoothly, making better time than someone trying to race through the route might expect. Or might have. Why did I say expect? This was thanks to a certain someone who'd been manipulating nearby traffic lights to ensure her path was free of disruptions.
そのままの速度を維持して。7秒後に正面交差点の信号を切り替えます。3、2、1。切り替え完了。交差点に入る前に 速度を落として左右を確認して。了解。っていうかさ、こういう乗り方だと燃料の減りとかタイヤの垂れ具合が確認できないんだけど。
She's a total gearhead under that for the car. Like, she's a grease monkey. Gotta love it.
構わないわ。どうせ当日は別の車を用意するし。この車じゃないの？当たり前でしょ。この車は国交省に登録されているし、車を借りるときにあなたの名前で借りたのだから、犯行に使用すれば当然あなたの身元が割れてしまうわ。ああ、そっか。確かに。
Amani kept up her end of the conversation, but her tone of voice was somewhat distracted. She'd been thinking about when to bring up something that had been on her mind for some time now. She just asked the question, "Are you Kazuki?" Fortunately, the two of them were alone in the car, in a manner of speaking. A better opportunity might never present itself. After a moment of hesitation, Amane forced herself to speak.
ねえ、和樹。
Oh.
次の信号まで3秒。前方の停止車両を先に出すから流れに乗りながら追い越して。ねえ、和樹なんでしょ？それは私に問いかけているの？
Who else?
他にいないじゃない。風見和樹、風見裕二の姉、周防天音の同級生。
Amani's gonna have a fucking breakdown.
7年前、私立滝園学園バスケットボール部の夏合宿の帰り、マイクロバスによる転落事故により死亡が確認されている。でも、生きていたんでしょ？アベレージを維持したまま、次の交差点を左に曲がって。
Come on, Kazuki, just say it.
ごまかさないでよ。いいから、道順を覚えることに集中しなさい。この辺の道は、実家の手伝いをしてた時に何度も通った道だからちゃんと分かってるよ。道路は生き物よ。時間によって状況はいくらでも変わるわ。重要なのは決められた道順を決められた時間で走ること。遅すぎても早すぎてもダメ。和樹こそ私を早い人だと思わないでよ。早く深く正確にって子供の頃から父親に教わって育ったんだから。例えばこの先の緩い右が2つ続く複合コーナーだけど、ここはセオリーを無視してイン側に鼻をこすりつけるみたいにベタベタに進入した方が早いんだよ。1個目の進入で荷重を乗せて姿勢を作ったら、2個目のコーナーに向けて荷重を残したまま1個のコーナーとして曲がった方が早いし。
Yep, sure. I'm gonna assume what she said is right.
その方がブレーキに負担をかけずに済む上に、荷重が十分に乗ってる分、脱出も2テンポ早くスロットルを開けられる。
Sarah, this is do you have any Father's Day plans? We'll be going out for dinner that day. So that's why I'm just not streaming at all tomorrow. I will be going out that day. I do have my schedule made for next week, though. For good old variety week that I'll show off at the end of stream. So yeah, nothing for tomorrow, unfortunately. I planned that out accordingly. Oakley dokily. Yeah, no worries, no worries. I wouldn't say that's too personal. Just asking my plans. It's all good. It's all good.
はい、グオーンってね。ちょいロング気味の4速がぴったりとはまる感じ。で、吹け切る頃には荷重も抜けてるから、そのままトップにスコンと入れてあげればバビューンって感じ。一応、路面のコンディションに合わせた本気ラインが2本。タイムよりフレキシブルを取ったセーフティーラインが4本。完全にタイムを諦めた捨てラインがアウト側に1本。トータルのタイムを考えればコーナーの数は少ない方がいいし、コーナーを1つ捨てることでより安全にスムーズに走れることもある。どうよ。なるほど。二輪車の経験がある人間の発想ね。私だっていつまでも昔の私じゃないんだよ、和樹。しつこいな。
Just answer it, Thanatos.
不調から物の考え方まで和樹そのものじゃん。顔を見せなきゃごまかせると思ったの？もう認めちゃいなよ。
Okay, she's not having a complete freak out.
あなたがどう思い込もうと勝手だけれど、
あなたの知っている風見和樹はもう死んだのよ。
じゃああなたは誰なの？
まあいいわ。確かに私は風見和樹としての記憶は持っている。でもあなたの知っている風見和樹ではないのも事実。
She is Kazuki, but she also isn't Kazuki. It's a whole thing.
どういうことなの？ちゃんと説明してよ。
説明はしたでしょ。私はタナトス。風見和樹の思考をベースとしたただの機械仕掛けの国防装置でしかないわ。
She's not Kazuki, but she has all of her memories and her thought patterns are completely based off of her around her at that. So she's like the Schrodinger's Kazuki. She is and isn't Kazuki, depending on how until you start looking under the hood, I guess. I don't fucking know. She's in both states at once.
もう和樹はいないってこと？
Well, I mean, the Kazuki you knew personally is gone, but she's still around, kinda.
あなたは神様って信じる？
Oh my god.
それがどういう意味で言ってるのかよくわからないけど、条件にもよるかな。私って朝のテレビでやってる占いとかもいい時だけ信じるタイプだし。
When good things happen, that's when I believe.
それで正解。楽観的だけれど、神様なんて結局のところは都合のいい時にだけ存在すればいいというのが普通よね。神様を信じることで個人の能力を超えた先にある何かを引き出す助けになるのなら、信仰にも深い意味がある。いつだって神様が見てくださっている。だから頑張れる。そして精一杯頑張った人間とは、たとえその結果がどうであれ後悔はしないものよ。それが神様というシステム。
乱暴に言い切ったな。
都合のいい時にしか神を信じないあなたに合わせて話をしているのよ。他の人間には他の形で説明をするわ。1000人の人間がいれば1000の神様が存在する。観測者によって存在や現象が変化するのが神様なの。わかる？
Okay.
概念的な話？それとも精神的偶像の話？
Both.
両方。結局のところ、あなたにとっての神様とは、心が弱くてくじけそうな時に糧となる支えこそがそれなのよ。
相変わらず周りくどくて面倒くさい話をするんだね。
じゃあ、いつものようにもっと簡単に説明してあげる。あの夏の合宿の帰り道、あの山で起きた想像を絶する環境からあなただけがたった一人で無事に帰還し得たのは、
Which was?
あなたの強運によるものです。
Oh.
けれど、あのような苛烈な環境に置かれ、あなたは生死の狭間をさまよううちに、天の廃材とでもいうような理解しがたい力に導かれたような気がしているんじゃないかしら。
それは和樹がいてくれたから。和樹がいなかったら私、
そういうものの考え方を信仰というのよ。あなたにとって風見和樹はすでに神様です。
それ自分で言っちゃう？
Yes, Kazuki literally just called herself God.
人に言われると腹が立つから自分から言うのよ。
なるほど、和樹だ。
私は風見和樹であって風見和樹ではない。あなたの神様であって神様では
God
ない。
almighty.
神様は信じなくても構わない。それでも私を信じなさい。巣をあまね。
うん、信じる。私はいつだって和樹を信じるよ。
There's the tears.
まあ、少しは疑うべきなのだけれど、今はそれでいいでしょう。
There's the tears.
分かったのなら自分の仕事に集中しなさい。700メートル先の交差点を右折90度、20メートル直進後に分岐があるけれど、立教には乗らないで。
分かった。
あら素直。最初からこうしておけばよかったかしら。やっぱり人間って難しいわね。
The Kazumi Kazuki you knew is dead, huh? Now that was definitely a familiar line. Had she actually taken that from somewhere? Or something? Lines like that are fairly common in anime series and TV dramas, but in Amane's experience, the characters who delivered them were almost never actually dead. Concluding that it meant something like, "We can't see each other just yet," she decided to focus intently on the job in front of her. As long as they both survived, they'd see each other again. As long as everything worked out in the end, they'd be reunited. After all, it was Kazuki herself who said they'd meet again someday, all those years ago. And as of this moment, Amane was convinced it was true. Alright, now we'll end. That was a good call to keep going. That was a good call to keep going. That's a better spot to end off on. Okay. Okay. I'm okay. There. Okay, it's about 3 hours worth of Grisaia, so that's good. We are pretty much working through the halfway point now, so things are going to get pretty cool. Things are going to start heating up really soon. But we're not going to find out for a little bit, unfortunately, because next week is Variety Week once again. So our regular scheduled stuff is not happening that week. But what do I have for you guys? This is what I got for you guys. So I'm not streaming tomorrow, as I've already said. I'm just taking Father's Day off from streaming. But I will be back on Monday, starting Monday for our Variety Week, to finish Halo 2. We're going to finish Halo 2. There's only like 3 missions left in the game. I'm pretty sure I can finish them off in a single stream. Halo 2 is not that long of a game, to be perfectly honest. So we will finish Halo 2 tomorrow to start off Variety Week. Tuesday and Wednesday, I will take off as per usual. Possibly watch along Wednesday, we will see. Thursday, I will do some more Power Wash Sim. Again, finally, go back to those odd jobs I've been ignoring for now, and then maybe get into some of the DLC before they yank it all away from us. Friday will be some more Seed Battle Destiny. Let's see if we can actually finish the Seed Destiny storyline as part of Zaft. Maybe. Possibly. Saturday, I'm bringing back an oldie from a very long time ago. I am going to drag my Wii back out here, and we are going to boot up Yu-Gi-Oh! Falsebound Kingdom once again. The weird real-time strategy turn-based combat Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. Because I've actually been kind of having an itch to want to play it for a very long time, but I've just been forgetting. So we're going to go back to a game that I played a very, very, very long time ago. And then Sunday is going to be Pod Racer. I'm going to fire up the Switch again, and we're going to continue with our races in Pod Racer. I doubt we will finish all the races completely, but I was just feeling in a pod racing mood because now I understand the game a lot better. So that's what we've got for this coming Variety Week. I think that's going to be it now for me for today. I don't know if I want to raid out or not. I'm very tempted to raid out. You know what? Yeah, we're gonna raid out. Maybe. Yeah, we're gonna raid out as is. We're gonna raid out. We're gonna raid out. We are going to raid out. And raid. We are gonna go and raid the Light Twins, Elaine and Eliora. They're currently in the middle of playing Kingdom Hearts. They're on Kingdom Hearts 2 right now, so I think we all know what Kingdom Hearts is, so we all know what to expect in the good times there. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching, commenting, and lurking. Appreciate it very, very much. Again, we will be back Monday for some Halo 2 to finish her off. You're welcome, Mari. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, so until Monday, guys, I hope you all have yourselves a great rest of your night. And let's send some love off to the Light Twins.